Magnus takes the pawn on d5, and that's a blunder. No! Alright, let's see how Magnus Carlsen blunders against Wesley So in this one from the Opera Euro Rapid in 2021. Magnus with the black pieces in this game. Italian game. Okay, Wesley strikes at the center with d4, takes, pushes his pawn forward, attacking the knight. Where's it going to go? Nowhere. Alright, Magnus throws a counter punch against this bishop, which sidesteps. Okay, Magnus moves his knight out of danger, takes. The bishop is rocked back, knight c3, castles. Okay, bishop e3, lending further support over the base point of Wesley's pawns. Okay, bishop g4, pinning the knight to the queen. It's asked a question and maintains the pin. Okay, Wesley gets out of the pin. And interesting, instead of taking the knight and shattering White's pawn structure, Magnus chooses to set up this discovered attack on Wesley's queen, which sidesteps again to b3. All right, knight e7, castles. Okay, the bishop is hit and retreats to d3, where it x-rays black's bishop here. Knight f5. All right, queen back to c2. Look at these queen moves, and a lot of tension along this diagonal here. Okay, Magnus relieves this tension, takes. Okay, a lot of pieces just flew off the board there. c4. Okay, queen recaptures. Okay, pawn f6. Okay, Magnus recapturing with the pawn. I would have thought he would have wanted to keep these pawns together and recapture with the rook, but no, he captures with the pawn instead. The computer actually says it's fine either way. Okay, Wesley e4, hitting the queen, which retreats to d7. Okay, look at all these heavy pieces lined up along this d file here. Okay, knight h4, potentially looking to get to this outpost on f5. Okay, king goes to the corner. Okay, knight f5 it is, supported by this pawn and this e4 pawn push several moves ago. Okay, c5, and Wesley plays d5. Yeah, you don't want to take this pawn and blunder everything. So Wesley pushes his pawn forward, bishop e5. Okay, rook b1, putting some pressure along here and restricting the queen's movement. Okay, Magnus puts an end to all that. Okay, rook e8. Yeah, just putting some pressure over this base point of Wesley's pawns, which are just holding everything together here. This e4 pawn. Okay, Wesley moves his king to the corner. Bishop d4. Yeah, if he hadn't moved his king over and did something else, this bishop d4 move comes with check. The king has to move, and notice now that this e4 pawn isn't defended by the queen. And actually, the computer says this is a perfectly fine position, but you don't want to be losing your base pawn for nothing. So, okay, we have the king moving to the corner first, then Magnus coming with bishop d4. All right, Wesley providing some lateral defense over this e4 pawn, which is taken by Magnus's rook. Okay. All right. Okay, Magnus sacrifices the rook for a pawn and a knight. Okay, very interesting. All right, Wesley lining up his rooks along this e-file. Magnus takes the pawn on d5, and that's a blunder. That's a blunder. All right, why is it a blunder? Okay. Yeah, the rook is defended, and the blunder isn't because of this rook e8 check move, although that would have been winning. But the even better move, and the move played in the game, is actually his quiet rook g4 move over to the side. And what is this move doing? Yeah, it's blocking off the king's escape squares and setting up this mate threat on e8. So yeah, if after this move you're doing something random, obviously that's just checkmate. And if you're thinking about blocking this rook maybe with your own rook, suddenly, I mean, this queen's eyes are opened, and you deliver checkmate with the queen here on g8, or with the rook. I mean, take your pick. And finally, yeah, if you're moving back with the rook, let's say on d8, thinking you're providing protection over this 8th rank, well, all of a sudden, yeah, the queen just swoops in here to f7. And how are you defending mate on g7 here? Yeah, you can't. The bishop is blocked by its own pawn, and the queen can't get there. It's just going to get swooped up. So yeah, after this quiet rook g4 move, Magnus plays kind of a desperation move, h5, hitting the rook and providing some breathing room for the king. But after Wesley throws in a couple checks here, and after this retreating queen c1 move, setting up a mate threat on h6, yeah, Magnus resigned. I mean, you can take the rook, but the queen is coming in, and that's mate. Well, that's mate. So, just stepping back here, after Wesley lines up both of his rooks along this e-file, yeah, instead of Magnus taking the pawn on d5, which was again a blunder, the computer likes this move, bishop e5, the best move in the game, and it's a completely drawn position if you had played that. Basically saying, don't your rooks look pretty dumb now along this e-file? I mean, play might have continued like this, hitting the queen. Notice it's defended. And maybe long term, Magnus could have put some pressure along this g-file. But yeah, instead, he went pawn grabbing and underestimated this quiet rook g4 move, setting up all kinds of mate threats against Black's king, and ultimately lost the game. Alright, in this next game we have Magnus on the white end in this one from the FTX Crypto Cup in 2021. We have a Polish opening denoted by 1b4, not something you see very often. Okay, we have a pair of light square bishops coming off the board. A lot of pawn moves in this one. Magnus pushing all of his pawns on the queen side of the board. Okay. Moving even further, hitting the bishop, which retreats. Castles, castles, knight d2. Okay. Pair of pawns comes off the board. Wesley positions his bishop on this diagonal. Rook c1. Takes, takes. Okay, queen e7. Yeah, this pawn is hanging, but now so is this one. So you take mine, I take yours. Okay, Magnus doesn't even take. Moves his rook to b1. Rook c8. Yeah, if you're black, you don't want to be pawn grabbing in this position unless you want to lose your queen or lose this piece. So rook c8. Okay, Magnus takes out the knight and blunts the bishop with this d4 move. Wesley repositions the bishop onto this diagonal. Okay. Some shuffling of the knights here. That's interesting. Let's just rewind a couple more moves. Yeah. If you're white here, you want to be in a position for your knights to be, to enter these two outposts on e5 and c5. You want your knights on these two squares. So look at the repositioning by Magnus to get the knights onto those two squares. Interesting. Okay. Rook b6, and the knight does hop into e5. Okay. Look at the major pieces lining up along the B and C files. The knight is taken out and recaptured with the pawn. Interesting. I would have thought Magnus would have wanted to recapture with the knight here, but okay. Computer thinks it's an equal evaluation either way. Knight is hit, retreats to d7. Okay, rook b3. All right, Wesley pushing his pawn to c5. Magnus takes the pawn with the knight. Wesley recaptures. And Magnus recaptures with the queen, and that's a blunder. That's a blunder. What's the move? What's the move? Yeah. It's just rook c6. There's nothing tricky about this one. And Magnus is losing his queen. I mean, if he's moving his queen anywhere, it's back rank mate. So he can't do that. What happened? All right, Magnus. Yeah, next move. It's a sad one. He just plays rook c3, and Wesley just takes the queen. All right, I think this game goes on for a few more moves here, but I mean it's obviously completely busted for white. Okay, rook on the second rank. Magnus pushing his pawn, but threatening mate here on f2. Magnus defends, or does he? All right, he doesn't even take the rook. He keeps pushing his pawn. Yeah, Wesley takes and slides his queen over to e5, and Magnus resigned in this position. I mean, this pawn is hanging. This pawn is hanging, covering the promotion square. There's nothing to do. And just rewinding a couple moves here. Yeah, if you think this is defending, it's not. And if you take the rook, well, this rook is hanging with check. You block and you're losing that pawn anyway. Wow. Okay. What happened here? Let's rewind here to after Wesley recaptures the knight with his own. What's the right move here? Okay, well, it's not pawn takes because you're losing a rook. Yeah, it's just rook sliding over to c3. And this knight is actually toast. If the knight is moving anywhere, it's just back rank mate in a few more moves. So that's not working. Actually, the only knight move that you can make as black without it being completely lost is knight d7. And the point is not back rank mate here. Otherwise you are losing as white, because the knight can actually block on this f8 square. So it's not back rank mate after d7. It's just to come over with the rook to c7, hitting both the queen and the knight. The queen has to sidestep. You're picking up the knight, and material is pretty much balanced, and it's an equal position here. But yeah, Magnus took with the queen, and that's just a mental lapse. It's just a mental lapse. I mean, yeah, Magnus had to have seen that this knight could be recaptured. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gone in for this knight takes pawn move to begin with. He had to just slide over his rook to c3, but instead takes with the queen and loses his queen and loses the game. Just a mental lapse by the best in the world. Yeah, it should be an encouragement to all of us that even the best in the world make mistakes like this one.